Welcome in to another Coinage chat here today, everybody. Thanks for joining us live, whether it's on the Twitter space or via our live video here. Excited to delve into the wild world of digital identity, how it all works, what the buzz is about, why it's important in Web3, in crypto, and excited to be chatting with our guest today, Charlie Brooks. Is a senior manager on the biz dev team with Unstoppable Domains. Charlie, thanks so much for joining us today to chat about all this stuff and also announce our exciting partnership. Coinage is partnering up with Unstoppable Domains, helping your guys' community kind of get first dibs here, also integrating the way that the Unstoppable Domains domains work on our site. So when you connect your wallet, that domain will show up now. Charlie Brooks, thanks so much for taking the time.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on, and super excited about the partnership as well. So excited to chat with you today.
Yeah, it's rare. You know, normally in the space is the static just conversation about the thing, but today we're actually delving into it ourselves as a Web3 native media company co-owned by our NFT holders and giving all the people who have Unstoppable Domains first access to come in and mint our NFTs. All you need to do is connect your wallet on coinage.media. And if you're listening to this, if you already have an Unstoppable Domains, it's already live, folks. You can do it right now in real time. You can go ahead and buy our NFT before we drop them on February 9th. But Charlie, I think part of the reason why we wanted to do that, because, you know, obviously you guys have a pretty huge community of people who have already signed up to use the domains. So that's obviously a plus, speaking candidly. But B, I mean, I think it's because, you know, these things are intriguing. And, you know, maybe if you're new to crypto, you just saw like .eth, .crypto, .nft, and you're saying, well, what's that all about? So I want to kind of start this discussion around why, you know, that's important in crypto anyways, rather than just, I guess, copy pasting that long wallet address and using these domains.
Right. So I think that's certainly the first use case that got us where we are today is simplifying crypto payments. So you think about a traditional wallet, you open it up, you want to send some crypto, you need to share that hexadecimal address, which is pretty long. It's complicated. It's not something that you can just share with someone verbally very easily. So you have to copy and paste. So we wanted to replace that, have a better user experience. And we like to think of it kind of like how Venmo works, where you have a human readable address, right? So instead of saying, oh, I'm 0x24y, you can say, hey, I'm charlie.crypto. And since you can attach all your different crypto addresses to one domain, it really does simplify the process, which we think is huge for facilitating peer-to-peer payments. Because right now we have millions of crypto users, but we want to have billions, right? And if we want to get to that billions number, you have to take out the scary factors that make crypto payments not very intuitive for people. So I think having that human readable address is a super easy way to facilitate peer-to-peer payments, get people more comfortable with sending crypto. And there's also some security aspects as well, because even though you can copy and paste an address, there are some scams where you think you're copy and pasting, and during that copy and paste, it will sub in some digits, change the address, and then of course that crypto is gone forever. So there's a security aspect for sure, but I think it's mostly around the UI and just making it easier for people to understand how to use crypto, how to send it without feeling like they have this scary address they're dealing with.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty important thing. And also kind of, you know, the personalization piece of all this when we talk about, you know, claiming your stake in Web3, right? In terms of, obviously there's a lot of enthusiasm when all this stuff kind of shot up and it's like, all right, we want to put our flag everywhere, plant it everywhere in the metaverse. And so, you know, owning those domains, you know, there are only so many of them for that certain thing, .crypto, whatever it may be. But there's a lot of them. And so I guess, you know, that's one of the things that is interesting with Unstoppable Domains versus just having a .eth name. How does it work, I guess, across chain? What does that look like in terms of integrating all these things together?
Right. So you can attach any crypto address to a domain. So we support the top 250 plus coins and tokens that are out there. So for the payments use case, it's pretty simple. So I'd say it's very cross chain. And then if you think about custody, that can be a little different. Domains are minted on Polygon. So you need to be able to custody Polygon assets if you want to hold it in your wallet. And Web3 domains are NFTs, like you mentioned. So it's an ERC 721. You store it in your wallet. It's got all the same security of storing anything else in your wallet. So yeah, it's certainly cross chain. And then some of our products are more EVM focused. So for example, our login product is EVM and also supports Solana wallets. So, you know, we consider ourselves fairly chain agnostic. We mint on Polygon because they're great to work with. They keep fees low, so we can continue to cover gas fees for our end users, so they don't have to pay gas when they mint domains. And we'll keep looking for more solutions for cross-chain functionality, because I think, if you talk to anyone crypto, they'll say that's key. We need cross-chain functionality. We need interoperability. And that's something that we're certainly working towards. So you'll see some more features coming around how we're supporting different chains, even though we mint on Polygon.
We had some new listeners join the space, so I wanted to just kind of reset here and explain everything in terms of why today is such an important day. And for those who just joined, rehash the partnership that we lined up here at Coinage with Charlie, actually, over at Unstoppable Domains to make this all work. Because we have our public drop coming up a week from today, and we partner with Unstoppable Domains. So for anyone who has an Unstoppable Domains domain, who has kind of, again, it could be .nft, could be .bitcoin, could be any of those that are in the Unstoppable Domains universe there, you can already mint our NFT at the community price, which is just 0.15 ETH, to co-own Coinage, co-own the show, and tell us what we should be covering. What are the big stories in crypto? Today, what we are covering is kind of what this piece of digital identity is all about, and Charlie's been nice enough to come on and chat with us here on the space to kind of explain it. And Charlie, I mean, like I said, you guys aren't the only ones in the space, right? So when we talk about Unstoppable Domains as a company, as someone working on this, the differentiation between what you guys are up to, what ENS is up to, what basically any digital identity company in the space is up to. Talk to me about kind of Unstoppable Domains' journey to get to where they are now. As we said, I think, pretty sure it's upwards of what, more than 400,000 unique owners? What are the numbers there?
Correct. Yeah, we've minted over 3 million domains, and the user count is over 500,000. So people tend to buy multiple, and they do that. They'll typically get one for personal use, one for their business. They might get one for their DeFi programs, their DeFi profiles, or maybe their social profiles. So that's kind of one of the cool things, is that you can have multiple identities. Everything can remain anonymous if you want, or you can be fairly transparent. So that's kind of how we're thinking about data with Web3, is having it user controlled and user owned. So for Unstoppable, we originally minted on Ethereum, and instead of focusing on one TLD, we decided to expand to 9 different ones. So as you mentioned, we've got .crypto, .nft, .blockchain, .x, .888, a few more, which we think speaks to kind of different interests around crypto. So you might not be an ETH maxi, you might be more interested in other chains, and we didn't want to kind of force anyone to feel like they had to choose one chain or the other. So our names are a bit more generic and kind of represent what your interest might be in the space. So .nft obviously works for all the NFT collectors out there, NFT projects. It makes a ton of sense. So that's kind of how we think about TLDs, is we want to offer something for everyone that's still attached to crypto in one way or the other. And differentiators wise, I would say there are certain trade-offs. You look at different naming services, they're all built differently. We think we have a bunch of advantages, namely that when you buy an Unstoppable domain, you do own it forever. So there's no leasing factor. That's yours forever, which really means that on the IP front, we want to make sure that brands own their IP. So, if you think about Web 2, there are stories where someone doesn't renew their .com at the stroke of midnight, right? So let's say a major brand like Nike.com, they forget to renew, and all of a sudden someone else buys Nike.com and they're holding them hostage for millions of dollars. There's lots of squatting with Web 2 domains, people just buying tons of domains, waiting for someone to come and need that domain, and then charging thousands of dollars, millions even. So what we do as a company is protect trademark domains on the back end. So if you are a Nike or a Southwest Airlines or something like that, you can reach out to us, and we've protected that brand IP for you. Again, because these are NFTs and you own them forever. So we want to make sure they're in the right hands. So I would think about domains. Yes, there's the personal use case, but there's also the brand protection IP use case for companies to use them for payments, for websites that are decentralized. All sorts of different use cases.
It's been fascinating to kind of watch, I guess, that battle. Domain squatting is a thing that happened even before Web3. You can go back to Web2 domain squatting in terms of just buying up URLs, whether it's the Wikipedia or wherever, and just owning them and squatting on them.
Right.
It's important, I guess, to highlight as far as, there was a huge craze, I feel like, at the beginning, right, last year, or even before, when it was kind of like, all right, what's this going to look like in Web3? What was kind of your take on, I guess, how that shook out for everybody watching it play out, and I guess where we've settled in now, as you said, IP and brand protection around some of that?
Yeah, it's been interesting. NFTs have really joined popular culture over the past year and a half. And we've seen that in the form of brands reaching out to us. So a lot of big brands are trying to understand how they can enter Web3. What are the advantages for them, for their customers? Certainly, there's a lot of interest in the metaverse for brands, setting up these digital storefronts. So a lot of them will reach out to us to secure that IP and say, hey, can I get my TLDs? Can I get my Nike.crypto and so on, which has been great for us because it's helped us form a lot of partnerships, have a lot of really interesting conversations around Web3, around NFT functionality for businesses. So it's been great for the space, certainly, and really, really helped us. I'd say it's helped Unstoppable Domains. It's also helped the metaverses because they need more users coming to the space, so they need brands to come on board and have those digital storefronts. So it's certainly been interesting seeing the more technical, friendly counterparts at these big brands reaching out, and they kind of understand what the whole purpose of blockchain tech is, and they want to leverage it. But it's not always clear. So it's good to see them reaching out to Web3 companies like Unstoppable and saying, we want to join Web3, but we don't really know how. Can we still collect data from our users? How does it all work? What can we do with NFTs to track our products or engage our customers? So yeah, it's pretty interesting, and even the government is starting to get into it. I'm sure you guys probably saw recently. I think the DMV, or maybe it was a major auto brand, is going to start using NFTs to track their units. So essentially, they got to assign an NFT to each auto that they sell, and then also give that NFT to the owner in the form of it's kind of like the new pink slip, right? So you have an NFT that says, "Hey, I bought this car on this date," which is pretty cool because crypto can feel like a very small world, but then you have these big auto brands coming in, and you start to realize, wow, this is really starting to penetrate the market in interesting ways.
Yeah, you might not think of the California DMV as being cutting edge. No one thinks as the DMV as a place of innovation, but I guess it would be, out of all the DMVs, would be the California DMV to go with car titles as NFTs. But it has been interesting to watch. It's also been interesting to watch kind of the partnerships even within the Web3 space. I know you guys have partnered with a few wallets out there, including Trust Wallet and Rainbow and other ones as well. And now, as today, the Coinage partnership as well gets added to that list.
Oh yeah,
I want to remind people too, because we pinned the link. So this is out there. So anyone who's listening right now, you can go to our Twitter right now. It's pinned here. To enter the raffle, Charlie's nice enough to bring along 3 $100 coupons will be given away to people who submit in that pre-mint raffle, as well as we'll be giving away free Coinage NFTs through that as well. So just a reminder for everyone listening that that'll be there. But Charlie, in those other partnerships outside of Coinage, in pairing up with those wallets, I mean, talk to me about, I guess, it's a long arc of people getting into this space. And obviously when prices are higher, maybe that arc looks a little bit shorter. But it's a long arc. And, I mean, as you've added those partnerships over the years, I mean, what has it looked like in terms of, you were talking about brands realizing the potential here and staking their claim to certain domains. But what does that look like in I guess, finding the more crypto native people through those partnerships with Trust Wallet, Rainbow, us, whatever that looks like?
right. Yeah, it's very much it's very much a partnership where I think all the major crypto companies know that it's going to take teamwork and a lot of effort to bring billions of people into crypto. So, my experience working at BizDev is that everyone's very eager to work with one another. We want to give exposure to our products to our different user bases because everyone, crypto is very global. So a lot of the companies we work with are in Asia, Europe, Africa, and everyone has that same goal. Let's migrate Web2 people to Web3. Let's get all the brands on board. Let's get all the individuals on board, getting them using crypto, using peer-to-peer payments. And wallets is such a perfect use case for us because of the simplification of the username. That's been really, really one of the easier angles for us for growth is partnering with these big wallets. And certainly they're always looking for ways to make it more intuitive, more user-friendly. So replacing the hexadecimal address with an NFT domain, a Web3 domain, just makes a ton of sense. So, it's also nice to see when you're just from a UI standpoint, you're looking at your app, putting in Charlie.crypto is just so much friendlier than copy and pasting that address. So I'd say wallets are certainly eager to work with all the kind of complementary products out there. And that's one of the things I love about Unstoppable Domains, is that we can really work with anyone in crypto, because what we do really does complement their products. And anytime you see a wallet address, you can replace that with a Web3 domain. So even outside of payments, like with what Coinage is doing, anytime you see that wallet address, that can be a domain. It could be something anonymous if you are, there's so much anonymity in Web3, a lot of focus on that. So we want to facilitate that. But we also realize that it's nice to have that username that has data portability. And that's one of the things that I think is such a game changer around digital identity with our product, is that, Web 2, you create these usernames, right? Everybody has all these different usernames and passwords. I think the average is over 60. The top ones like your Twitter, your Instagram, back in the day, your AOL Instant Messenger, your MySpace, all these different profiles, that data is siloed. So it sits on that application. You can't take it with you, which is unfortunate, especially if you're a creator and you're building up this community, you're creating all this content. And then if you decide, you can't monetize that way, or that app is dying out, whatever, that information stays there. You can't bring it with you. You don't own your Twitter handle. Twitter does. So with Web3 domains, we're trying to really flip that script and say, users should be in control of their data, the accomplishments that they've built, the followers that they've built, they should be able to bring that with them. So for Web3, what we want to do is have everything you want attached to a single identity that you can bring along with you. So data portability in the truest sense, which is pretty cool, because then if you think about, Web 2 logins, you're required to share all this information, right? And everybody's just kind of gotten complacent where, I'm signing up to buy something and I have to give my address and my bank account and my private information and all this stuff, and we just give it to them. Yeah. And then it's no surprise that, a week later you start to get new spam email that you've never seen. It's like, well, of course, everyone's harvesting data, they're reselling it. We have no way of controlling that.
It's floating around on the dark web. It's already out there, not only the email, but the password with it. But yeah, no, I mean, I think it is, anyone listening who has an Unstoppable Domains already can go to Coinage.media to kind of see this in action in terms of even just pairing the wallet. Honestly, you're talking about all this stuff, and it's kind of, I guess, data portability, and also just kind of like, that community portability, honestly. Like you're talking about Twitter, kind of that living there. Then you have to build up an audience on a different platform. The whole reason why, I quit traditional media to kind of come over into Web3 media was, what does that look like when the community actually cones the show? Then it doesn't matter exactly which platform, the show lives. Could be on Facebook, Facebook Watch, could be on Instagram, could be on YouTube, could be wherever. It's wherever this community wants to see the show move. So it's been a fascinating kind of evolution. I think, that can exist with media. Obviously, there are Web3 kind of social media platforms going right after the exact social media revolution in terms of turning that into Web3. I feel like all of these other sectors, though, are kind of experimenting right now, not just media, not just social media, but basically anything. And it was interesting, too, because I feel like beer's a weird one, but a lot, like Anheuser-Busch, I think, was the first one to go after beer.eth, right? So that was kind of a big move for them. To people in the space, it might not seem huge because it's just, they bought a domain. What's the big deal? But for people who might have bought some of the domains from you guys using .nft, Bitcoin, whatever, I mean, what have you seen in terms of the brands there? Like, what were the ones, I don't know if it's most expensive. I don't know if that's the easiest one to highlight, but I guess where is the action bet?
Oh, wow. A lot of the action comes from our brand protection agency partners. So they are tasked with protecting the IP of all these big brands. So they'll reach out to us first typically, and then they might introduce the big brand. And I'd say a lot of the interest I've seen is around fashion. And then I would say, surprisingly, automobiles. But I'd say fashion is one of the top ones because there's such an interest in the metaverse play. Wearables for your avatar has been pretty interesting. There's a lot of companies that will pair a real life item with your digital wearable. So you buy a hoodie for your avatar and then they send you a hoodie in the mail, which I think is pretty cool. So I think brands see the power of digital shopping. Obviously, the internet has completely changed the way that people shop. And I think the metaverse is kind of that next phase for digital shopping where maybe it's for your avatar because you're big into metaverse or gaming or whatever it is, or maybe you just want to try something on digitally. So there's all these cool platforms that enable you to virtually try something on before you buy. So I think brands want to be where people are. They want to be where the new tech is, where people are spending their time. And from a distribution standpoint, it's pretty interesting that if you put some money into your metaverse digital displays and shops, that can have a fair amount of upfront costs, but you don't have that hard cost of setting up a store somewhere, a brick and mortar. So it's interesting because they can reach so many more people if they get creative and use digital spaces that Web3 has been setting up. So I'd say fashion brands, certainly the high end ones. That's kind of what's sticking out the most as far as the most interest coming from these big brands for Web3 and the metaverse.
Yeah, even just industry wide, Dolce & Gabbana, Gucci. I feel like I've seen a few different NFT endeavors from the big names in fashion.
Yeah.
And also, as we continue to chat, Charlie, we're seeing the entries kind of pile in here for the giveaway that is both for coupons to Unstoppable Domains. We've got 3 of those that we'll be selecting winners on that entry list using our pre-mint link that's pinned here in the space, but then also giving away free Coinage NFTs as well. So both of those, are important to highlight on the space as we're talking about it. Beyond that, though, as it looks like, I don't know if Charlie dropped off on the eCam. Is he still here? He may have dropped off.
Testing.
No, he's back.
Can you hear me?
I hear him. Yeah, all right, he's back. So when we're talking about, I guess, getting this, I guess fashion, as you said, is like an easy one to point to as where things are going well. Where have you seen maybe, I guess, the opposite of that? Where have you seen, I guess, the toughest onboarding for trying to explain some of this stuff? Because I've certainly had some interesting conversations with people who are stuck in the old way of doing things. In bringing people on, what have you seen in terms of industries that might not be there, not ready for this?
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, there's certainly a lot of fear coming from the banking community.
Yeah.
They don't want to facilitate. Certainly, a lot of them are setting up the ability to buy crypto because they don't want to miss out. But at the same time, you have kind of contradictory statements coming from leadership. And JP Morgan comes to mind. Jamie Dimon will consistently talk about crypto in a negative light, but at the same time, JP Morgan has all these crypto funds that they're setting up. So I think banks are concerned, and this is more on the crypto side than actual Web3. And I would say for the Web3 side, it's around data capture. They don't want to facilitate a world where users don't have to share private information. So, when we think about data control, a lot of these big tech companies make their money from aggregating and collecting data and then reselling it. So Web3, with this idea of data control, doesn't really fit in that business model. They don't want users to be in control of their data. They don't want users to get paid for their data. They want to be the ones collecting that revenue. So I think that's where some of the hesitation comes in is, with smart contracts, you can prove who you are without sharing private information. Mm-hmm. And so if a brand no longer has an avenue to collect your private information, then they're going to miss out on a lot of revenue from reselling that data. So I think that's a pretty big one.
Yeah. I mean, we've experienced that even ourselves here at Coinage. I will say that is kind of one of the things, when we first started using NFTs as the ability to watch our content on our site at coinage.media, it was kind of like, okay, normally when you have people log in for media publications, you'd have them create a login, a profile, you'd capture all that data and go from there. And being in Web3, we didn't even capture emails. So like even telling people, you can own the show now and we drop these, it's partnerships through like you guys that we've been trying to get the word out there again, when even the people who had come to our site before, because we are Web3, we're not collecting that stuff, it actually made it tricky. So there are learning lessons, I think, for anyone coming into the space. But let's talk about the actual product itself here too, because I'm intrigued and excited about the ability to kind of give away 3 of these $100 coupons, because the question then becomes, how many domains can you actually get? And you were saying that they start at $5 in terms of the NFTs through Unstoppable Domains. So that potentially could be 100 divided by 5, by my math, Charlie.
Right, and some of them can be even cheaper. So it's typical to how you think about a Web 2 domain, where the more characters, the cheaper the price is going to be. So if you want to get your name and a couple numbers, that could be $5 easily. If you're going for some kind of dictionary word, planes.crypto, that could be much more expensive. So I think there's certainly a couple of different buckets. One would be the personal use case, which is a ton of our customers, and the other is more brands looking for that Web3 site. And Unstoppable Domains does cover gas fees. We mint on Polygon, so when you come to our site, the price you see is the price you're going to pay, and there's no ongoing costs, right? There's no renewal fees, which is certainly a big differentiator between what we're doing and Web 2 domains. When you get a .com, you do not own that. You are renting it for a certain amount of time. But with Web3, we think you should really own your digital identity, and a big part of that is that Web3 domain. So you buy it once, it's yours forever, it's in your wallet. You could transfer it to someone, you could resell it on OpenSea or other marketplaces, but it is yours forever if you want it to be.
There is. So we were talking about high fashion. We were talking about banks in terms of the polar opposites, in terms of adoption and excitement about everything in Web3 and in the metaverse. Gaming is another big one that comes up kind of constantly in Web3. I know Unstoppable Domains partnered with Ready Player Me, a metaverse 3D avatar kind of play on all this.
Oh yeah.
Last year in season 1 for Coinage, we actually rebuilt my shitty apartments in the metaverse. The first ones I lived in New York, rat-infested cockroaches. We put that in Decentraland. And our community now co-owns it, so it's their nightmare to deal with, which is actually a really fun experience to kind of figure it out in terms of like how you actually build in Decentraland. So everybody can go watch that episode. But I mean, Charlie, when you talk about gaming and metaverse and kind of how domains, I guess, are similar in the sense of, yes, there's scarcity. You can only kind of buy so many plots in this metaverse, depending on which one you're in. How does that kind of correspond with digital identity and kind of what some of these domains unlock in that realm?
Yeah, I think it speaks to data portability again, where you think about gaming. Traditionally, you go to a gaming platform, you create a username, and that's tied to that platform, right? So if you look at leaderboards, here's the leader for this game. He's won the most levels. He's won the most championships, tournaments, whatever it is, and that information sits on there. And maybe that application or game is owned by a private company that has a few games, so they could do cross game leaderboards, but outside of that, that's kind of where it stops. So Web3 domains, Web3 gaming, we want that data portability. We want someone to be able to say, hey, this is my username across all of gaming. So when I show my accomplishments, that can include every game I've ever played, versus just the ones that are siloed to a certain platform. And for metaverses and gaming, we're such a good fit because we provide that username. So a lot of these systems don't want to deal with a username system. They'd rather focus on their core product. So having a Web3 domain as your default username system makes a ton of sense. And same kind of with DeFi, anywhere that you see a leaderboard and you're seeing wallet addresses, that could easily be instead Web3 domains because of our resolution APIs. So super easy to integrate with us. And then all of a sudden you have a default username system that you can use that users feel is powerful because they can take it with them. They can manage their data using it. So it's pretty cool. And certainly if you think about avatars, there's an avatar, but you need a name attached to that avatar. So why not have it be an NFT that you're in complete control of? And, if a platform goes down or is acquired or there are changes, you're never going to lose that NFT. It's still going to be yours. So there's a lot of security involved with it as well, which I think gamers certainly like. And really, there's also just kind of that social mental aspect where you want to have bragging rights, right? If you're a gamer, you want to say, hey, here's what I've done, check it out. It's cross-platform. Here's me. So having everything attached to a single profile in the form of a Web3 domain makes a ton of sense. And certainly that's helped us get these partnerships in the metaverse and in gaming.
Yeah, it's been, I guess like the Web 2 equivalent, as you were describing it there, would be kind of like, I guess, a link tree in terms of like just if you wanted to use it as that metaphor, just in that just small kind of like use case that you just described there in terms of like, yes, here's where I exist in this platform, here's where I exist on that platform kind of vibe. But it's all kind of fascinating in terms of seeing where this goes in terms of what things get unlocked. And I think that's kind of exciting too. We've kind of doubled, I think, in the spaces in terms of listenership just here. So I just want to remind people what we're even doing here and who we have on today in the Coinage chat. We do these weekly here, and we talk about big ideas. Today we're exploring digital identity with Charlie Brooks from Unstoppable Domains. And very excited to note that we partner with Unstoppable Domains for our drop here. So anyone who has already linked their wallet with an Unstoppable Domain can mint our NFT right now ahead of the public drop next week on February 9th. And Charlie's nice enough to throw in coupons as well through the pre-mint link that we pinned to also win those to buy Unstoppable Domains as well. But Charlie, when we're talking about kind of all of digital identity across those things, you yourself, let's get personal for a second here. Where have you seen kind of the most exciting piece when you're explaining digital identity to everyone using Unstoppable Domains tech? Where are the biggest misconceptions in terms of what now gets unlocked beyond, I guess, what we've talked about already, data portability, establishing your kind of unique identity online in Web3? I mean, what do you see as maybe the next step beyond that, I guess, to get people who aren't in Web3 excited about it?
Sure. So I think short term, it's credentials, which we've been working on. So when you set up your profile, you can attach credentials, and mainly those are NFTs at this point. So if you think about a ticket, for example, an NFT ticket, that can live on your profile. And so if you, let's say it's to a DAO or some Web3 community that you've joined, you can now have that ticket attached to your profile forever, and that can get you access. So if you're a community, let's say Coinage want to say, hey, we're having an event in New York City. Coinage members are welcome. It's pretty easy to prove that you own the Coinage token using your wallet, using your profile. Same with education credentials. This has been a pretty hot topic in Web3 because it's such a mess right now. Education credentials, even land titles, automobile titles, those things. It's a pretty messy system as is, and putting them in the form of NFTs makes so much sense. So the ability to prove, I have this degree, I have these skills, I'm a JavaScript developer or Solidity or whatever it is, having that attached to a profile in the form of NFT is super cool. And it's also very fast to transact and to prove. So, there's no request back to your university to say, hey, can you prove that I took this course? You can just have that in the form of NFT on your profile. So lots of different credentials being attached to profiles, I think, is that immediate use. And then when I think about kind of the most exciting long term, it's around getting paid for your data. So we think about right now, you sign up for a website, you share all this information, and then that big tech company takes that information and resells it to someone else to serve you ads. And so, that's how Facebook and Google have made billions and billions. That's all on user data. So what we are trying to facilitate is users control their data, and they can permission it when they're willing to. So instead of logging in and requiring information, a DApp can now request information, say, hey, I'd like to have your social profiles.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to have an email address, and we can keep everything private that they're not willing to share. And the cool part about that is that we can use forwarding tech to keep private anything that you're not willing to share. So similar to how Craigslist works with that relay email,
Yep.
you can say, hey, you can have my email address, for 3 months, 6 months, or whatever. But what you're sharing is an @ud.me email address that we spin up. And then if you decide that you're getting too much spam, you can deprecate that address. So your private Gmail address is never actually shared with the company. So, getting users paid for their data is what I'm most excited about for sure when we think about digital identity.
Huh, that's actually pretty interesting. Yeah, because I feel like that's the dream in Web3 is like, all right, what does it unlock in terms of compensating people for some of that data being shared? And I do think that is kind of the thing that everyone goes back to in Web3, and that's kind of the holy grail. But it's been slow to kind of get there, and now we're kind of it's exciting to hear kind of real use cases there being described. It's also kind of like, I guess, where we as a show, kind of as you talk about all that, are trying to invent kind of this new model with people who can co-own the NFTs that correspond to actually co-owning the show, in terms of, we put this idea out there, we put a pilot season out there. As you said, the old model in terms of advertising, collect the data, sell it. A show works very similarly in terms of put an idea out there, get an audience, sell advertisements against that audience. It's a very bad product dynamic, I think. Whereas with this, it's essentially start with something. As the audience grows, people will grow with the audience. There's only ever going to be 5,000 caucus NFTs that we're dropping here that people who have unstoppable domains can now mint. So it's kind of like, all right, you're growing with this pilot now. We're growing with Coinage, and we're building this in terms of even finding you guys. It was like, all right, what are the digital identity names we should be talking to in this space? And we have community members flag unstoppable domains. And it's like, all right, we'll go check that out. And that's essentially how this show's been working. And it's been exciting to watch it play out in real time. You also mentioned the tech piece, and I saw this. I think this is interesting because so many people have been talking about Chat GPT recently and AI.
Oh, yeah.
You guys also kind of partnered with the idea of trying to explore what your name should be. Talk to me about kind of using AI to help people kind of land on what their unstoppable domain should be.
Yeah. So our login offers free domains. So if you integrate our login product, and that's where all that permissioning data comes in. So you use login. Right now, Web3, the popular logins are Wallet Connect, MetaMask, and the payload that a dApp gets there is the wallet address. But our login, you can also permission any of the data that's on your profile, so social handles, email, and more. So the way we think about it is we want users to be able to share their data, and we have to facilitate them claiming domains in order to get there, right? So we have a free domain claim button via login. So if you don't already have one, you can hit login, you can hit claim a free domain, and then you input a little bit of text, and we'll spit out some examples of what you can claim for free, and then what might cost some money. So if you want to put in your number or favorite animal, we have a generator that just like provides suggestions based on what we think could be interesting. So we need to facilitate adoption by not only education, but by providing examples, because some people are kind of asking that question of, well, do I want it to be my name? Do I want it to be an animal or a sports team or whatever it is? And it's all personal choice, right? So we try to build tools that provide some examples and then lean into education. So that next step is, what is a Web3 domain? What can I do with it? Why should I care? How should I think about my name? And it all depends. If you're a creator and your name is part of your brand, then of course you're going to want that built in. And if you're just kind of a DeFi super user and you're concerned about people, trying to hack your wallet because you're dealing with big sums of crypto flowing in and out, then you're probably going to be more anonymous. So there's all sorts of different ways to use Web3 domains, and certainly the spectrum of the actual name choice is pretty massive. So we just try to facilitate something for everybody.
Yeah, you mentioned the space being massive. You mentioned kind of the competition. We talked about domain squatting too, in terms of brands trying to be protective about all that stuff. I mean, as we highlighted, it's .crypto, .nft, .x, .wallet, .bitcoin. There's a lot of different kind of things here. It has been fascinating. I don't know why, but I'm weirdly a USPTO kind of trademark geek. I'm not a lawyer, so I certainly don't know the ins and outs. But I mean, when it comes to other people also trying, like other companies, we talked about .eth as well. Like, what is kind of the protection element there, and what is the government? We were talking about the DMV being weirdly now into NFTs for titles in California. Like, what does that look like in terms of the government trying to figure out what these domains might look like as well? I know, like, you can maybe explain it in a way that people understand with, like, URLs and the way that those already exist.
Yeah, so traditionally the governing body is ICANN for domains. So they are the ones that will say, okay, we're going to sell .io, and then someone bids on it and they own it, and whoever owns it can now sell .io. Same with .com and everything else. So ICANN will do auctions every so often, but Web3 is entirely different. We're outside of ICANN. The technology is just entirely different. So, certainly brands want to own their IP in the eyes of ICANN, but Web3 operates outside of ICANN, which is pretty cool and exciting, because Web2, as we know it, has gotten pretty bloated, not very user friendly. The internet is not what it was promised to be. And a big part of that is around domains. People shouldn't have to pay renewal fees, hosting fees. They shouldn't have to worry about getting hacked. One of the, clearly the most important things about blockchain is that ability to provide security using a network of computers. So it's the same thing with Web3. If you get a website through one of the major providers today, all the information you're storing is going to be on their servers. And there are hacks every couple of years where all that information is exposed, because there's a big server farm, and all it takes is one hack to get every website's data and all their customer data, all those credit cards. But with Web3, you're storing content on a decentralized network, typically IPFS. So, as a brand, your customers' information can have that next level security using Web3, because that information is stored in all these different computers. So it's much harder to access, much harder to essentially hack. So, one of the huge advantages is just that security piece, and not being beholden to a private company that you're not really sure what their security practices are, and that they're a huge target.
Yeah, I was wondering about that too, though, because it is interesting in terms of the model, right? If you think about the other kind of, let's go back to ICANN in terms of domains and kind of the costs there. If you buy a domain, you got to pay to up it every year or two. Interesting, though, to compare unstoppable domains, even with ENS, in terms of re-registration fees and things like that, because it doesn't exist here. So from the company's model, what does it look like in terms of monetizing some of this beyond just kind of, I guess, dropping the NFT domain first? What does it look like after that, and kind of how does that work in differentiating from ENS and the other ones?
Yeah, so selling domains is our primary business model, primary source of revenue, but there's a lot that we're looking at in terms of custody. So, a lot of users don't want to have to worry about, you know, about the security of their account, about their seed phrase. So we're looking at some custody solutions. And then we also want to be a marketplace for different providers. So verification is one example. If you want to prove that you are who you are, especially as regulation comes for DeFi, we want to be a marketplace for different providers to essentially plug in and offer their services to end users. So they can say, hey, use our platform, verify your data. And then once you've done that, you don't have to keep doing it. So that can lower attrition. When you sign into a DeFi project right now, they might require a bunch of different information, including your government ID and different credentials. So what we're thinking about long term is being that marketplace, allowing different tech to just tap into our user base, offer their services. And this is where I get excited around selling data, right? Is that if you can be a marketplace for data, and you can facilitate that interaction between brands and individuals, that's pretty powerful, because instead of that brand going to some ad network and paying millions of dollars to get in front of a user, that brand can now go directly to that user and say, hey, I'd like to serve you ads. I'd like to follow your browsing history. I'd like your email, whatever it is, and I'm going to pay you directly. So why not cut out that middleman? Kind of like how crypto seeks to cut out banks as a middleman, especially for transactions. I think Web3 seeks to cut out that middleman in terms of selling data and serving as individuals.
Yeah, I think, and this is maybe, I asked you before, I was excited to have this chat with you, Charlie, because I feel like, we're getting a lot of good, juicy bits here in terms of kind of putting these all, like the old business models across the way. I think, Bitcoin in general proved and kind of paved the way for cutting out the middleman. And now we're seeing all these other business models pop up beyond just finance. It's like cutting out the middleman in every sector. And even for us too, I keep going back to the example, but I'm going to do it because, that's what we are as a Web3 show. It's just kind of like cutting out that middleman. In my way of seeing kind of how this evolves, the co-founder of Netflix is also one of our NFT holders. And, he's talked about kind of them revolutionizing the media model in terms of sending DVDs in the mail. Seemed like a novel idea at the time, but basically cut out studios, because then eventually it was just like with streaming, they could put anything they wanted on their own network, and they didn't need movie studios where they'd take a cut in charging the person who comes with the script. They charge for distribution. It's a weird thing to think about, but I'd be curious to get your take in terms of what that looks like as we move past this, right? Like, I don't know, I'm a little bit disappointed with like wallet integration thus far in terms of what you can do with a wallet. I was hoping it'd be a little bit farther along. But do you think maybe like somewhere in the future, the idea of everything could be coming through your wallet? It's interesting to think about the idea that you could have like a release go straight to the wallet as an NFT. A movie could just go straight to it. So it's kind of like going back to the Web 2 model of Netflix disrupting it by sending DVDs in the mail. It's essentially sending movies through your wallet as NFTs. It's kind of where I see the thing going. But I'd be curious to get your take on like whether or not that technology is even lag behind where you as a man on the front lines in developing this stuff would say, this hasn't moved as quickly as we maybe thought.
Yeah, I think peer-to-peer payments, I think there needs to be more usage there. People are still opting for traditional bank accounts, which isn't surprising. We're still very early on for the tech. But I think most of that question is around UI. You have to have tech that's friendly, that's easy for people to use. And setting up a wallet is still a little tricky. You're dealing with seed phrases. It can be a little scary. And so I think the UI is the big missing piece. And even for a lot of Web3 platforms, just having that really clean UI that is friendly, feels safe, is super important. And a lot of times it's still lacking. And the trade-off there is security, right? Crypto is built with lots of different security tech in place. And that often means that it's harder for the user to use. So I think that's where the industry, most people agree that it's the UI that needs a lot of work. You have to make the UX better as well. Those kind of go hand in hand. So just facilitating ease of use is important, especially for the older generations. They're never going to use crypto until they feel like, oh, this is just as easy as using my debit card. So I think there's, banks are getting there. They don't want to miss out. So you've seen a lot of activity with Visa and MasterCard and everything. They don't want to miss out on the crypto wave. They certainly understand it. So I think it's going to take those big companies to really make the tech very user friendly, and really they're the ones with all the billions of users, right? So as soon as they make it easier, then that means everybody else is going to be hopping on board in a much more seamless way. Whereas right now, if you want to get into crypto, it's on you. Like you're going to be doing your research. You're going to go look and see like, is this the wallet? Is this the wallet? Versus one day, you know, a massive bank just saying, hey, here's our new crypto wallet. You know, here's the easy download via email. So I think we're getting there, but it's certainly the UX. I think that's a little slower than the rest of the tech.
Yeah, I will say, you know, part of the reason that I think a lot of people are scared of crypto is that it does seem complicated from the outside. There are a lot of like technical steps right now. I'm looking forward to those getting away. Even on the space, there are some people saying, "Oh, well, how do I have a crypto domain, unstoppable domain, and you know, I want to get involved in this raffle where you're giving away all this stuff, and it's like it has to be resolved. You have to have set the resolve address, and there's steps with domains and things. If you've done that, you can already mint our Coinage NFT. By the way, if you connect the wallet, you can do that if it's been resolved. But I feel like there are a lot of those steps that do happen, and I feel like, you know, that's kind of why it's exciting right now. Is if you figured it out, you're a step ahead of everybody else, but you have to do the homework. So there is that kind of like long on-ramp for adoption. I mean, I guess personally for you, I mean, how long did that take? What's your kind of background in terms of getting this off the ground and kind of understanding it? For me, I guess my brother takes all my credit because he gave me half a Bitcoin back in 2014 and said, yeah, that was your graduation present. How much is it worth now? Nice. And I never hear the end of that story, so it's annoying. And my brother and I have now grown apart because of it, actually. No, but for you, I mean, what does it look like? What was kind of your journey?
Yeah, I started following crypto probably 2014, 2015, around kind of the Silk Road stuff that was going down. That's when I really got interested in it and bought some Bitcoin, but didn't really fall down the Web3 rabbit hole until more, let's say 2018. So for a while, I just kind of held some crypto, was following the space, but for me, it was more a store of value. And then more around 2018 is when I started to understand, you know, what else can blockchain tech do? And that's when I got really interested in, was thinking about these major issues that we have, you know, voting, for example. So few people vote, it's hard to get access to voting. It causes all these issues. And now that everyone has a mobile phone, why not use blockchain tech to, you know, undoubtedly prove that these votes are taking place in a way that is trackable and transparent, and therefore accurate. So, you know, it just kind of opened up that wormhole of, you know, these are all these cool different use cases, and certainly finance is a massive one. And then unstoppable domains, when I started learning about unstoppable domains, that's when I was really understanding the digital identity piece and kind of seeing the long-term vision around data ownership, the ability to sell data, and that Web3 username that you can take with you across the internet. So yeah, I'd say it started with crypto, just kind of watching it as maybe a way to make some money, and then turned into this, wow, blockchain can really change everything we do on the internet and make such a better user experience, because the internet has just changed so much from what it was originally supposed to be. You know, now it's just this entirely different beast that is not user friendly. You're being funneled to purchase something every time you're on the internet. You know, every time you input data, that's being sold and resold. So it's just not user first. And that's what I want to get back to, is a user first internet. So yeah, joining the space, I joined Unstoppable 2 years ago. Yeah. And it's just fantastic talking to all these different projects as a biz dev person. You know, some are focused on carbon credits, you know, helping the planet out. Some are focused on microfinance, you know, giving farmers micro loans where it's almost impossible for them to get a loan because they can't prove any of their assets. So there's all these really cool little projects, and they all in some way or another are related to blockchain tech as that base. So yeah, it's super exciting.
It sounds like, I mean, your journey is, I think it's very similar to like everyone who's now been like sucked into, you know, and we use the terms differently, crypto and Web3, I think a little bit, because the distinction there being like when I and you, it sounds like first kind of saw it, there wasn't that much there. You know, it's Bitcoin and Ethereum in terms of what you could do in terms of, you know, what we were talking about and putting some stuff on the blockchain. And then the explosion happened in terms of, all right, how far could this really go? And that's where I think it drew a lot more people into this Web3 idea of where does this go beyond it. It enables digital identity in the metaverse. It enables a lot of other things. And enables projects like or like ours, which, by the way, it sounds like you'd be the perfect person to have in our community because you're attached to all these projects in terms of how the tech is actually being used. I have a friend who's also trying to do carbon credits, and there are a lot of different use cases now. And so, you know, for us, it's mostly like kind of what we're trying to do in terms of crowdsourcing story selection, the idea of Web3 and media taking down the wall between a content creator and the audience who consumes that content, wants to watch it, and grow with the show as it scales an audience, is something that I think is an interesting idea that was not possible in Web 2, but is now possible in the era of Web 3, and attaching value to kind of some of those things and unlocking the network effects that come with us. I think that there is, we've only got about, 10 minutes left. I know we've been going for about an hour, so I want to give you your time back in the day. But for me, this has been a fascinating conversation because, when you talk about the network effects of all this too, I wonder if you've been at Unstoppable Domains for like 2 years, when you're seeing this all grow, what the longer term goal looks like. We've talked about some companies DAOifying their things, ENS obviously, maybe an example to point to. Like the network effects that come with Unstoppable Domains as you have customers buying these things up. What does that look like? What's the roadmap in terms of your eyes and Unstoppable Domains, how they think about the network effects of not just seeing people who buy these things as customers, but what that looks like in scaling?
Yeah, something interesting is governments wanting to get involved. Governments want a way to interact with citizens. They want to stay relevant with new tech. And Web3 domains are an interesting play there, where you could essentially facilitate government-sponsored coupons, whether it's food credits or, bus fares, or just general tracking around taxes, feedback where they're giving out surveys. There's lots of different ways that Web3 domains can be used by local governments. And we've had some really interesting conversations with some major cities, countries even, that want to essentially provide a Web3 domain to every single citizen, for all these use cases we just mentioned. So that's something that I think is very exciting for Unstoppable Domains, very exciting for Web3 domains in general. That would be my number one. And then number two, again, would just be true data ownership, facilitating a platform where you as a user can not only protect every piece of data that you have on the internet, but you can monetize it. So I think smart contracts help with that, and having something that's double blind is super interesting. So if a website needs you to prove that you're in the US, you can do that using a smart contract without giving your personal address, which is going to end up spamming you all sorts of crap. Mm-hmm. So smart contracts are facilitating the real world usage of blockchain tech. And that's what I'm excited to see continue is all those use cases where you as a user feel like you're in control. But really, I'd say the big one is just getting paid for your data. Like what a cool internet world where all of a sudden, Peloton wants to serve you an ad and they're like, can we give you $5 a week for the next 3 weeks to follow you around the internet and serve you ads? Like, sure. Why not? Like that's already happening. So why not get paid? And then, the more kind of valuable you are as an internet user, the more you can get paid, based on your followers on different handles, different platforms. So I think, kind of having a stronger relationship between brands and individuals is pretty exciting. And again, having users in control is the most important piece, because if you don't want to see ads, that's the way it should be. If you do want to see ads, why not get paid for them?
That's that's exactly kind of where we've landed as well, in terms of, having a free NFT that we had for season 1, where if people didn't want to watch ads, they could just mint that and connect their wallet and it would already preload all of our episodes without ads. Same thing here. Now we're unlocking the ability to co-own the show, mint an NFT, actually own it, scale, our content, share our stuff, and have it all work out that way in terms of growing this audience and signaling. I think, again, as you said, like having those options and letting people say, look, yeah, I am interested in this content. I think there should be a community-owned show that can highlight what's important in crypto, that's voted on by the community watching it and saying, yeah, this is important. You got to cover it like we're doing today. You got to cover digital identity because it's a key piece of all this. And we listen to our viewers, and I think it's just a cool experiment. And was honestly super excited to partner with Unstoppable Domains. It might seem like a small thing, but having your guys' community be able to kind of connect the wallet and see their own domains as they pair, it's an intimate thing. We kind of overlook it, but like actually pairing, in the era of all these hacks and stuff, you really got to trust what you're doing on the internet. As much as Web3 is kind of all about, you're in control, there's a lot of responsibility with that. So, it might seem small, but I was excited to kind of partner with Unstoppable Domains to have that pop up on our site, and excited again to offer anyone who has already resolved their ETH wallets to an unstoppable domain to mint ahead of everyone else for our public drop next week, February 9th. We're partnered with Magic Eden, but unstoppable domains owners get that right now at a cheaper price. So honestly, Charlie Brooks, really appreciate the time. Excited to partner with you guys. Excited to also run this raffle. Want to appreciate everyone who's been listening on the space, but also those who submitted to the raffle. We'll select those winners, give them those coupons you were generous enough to bring to our listeners as well. And thanks again for the time, man. Charlie Brooks, you got to come back if that's all right with you.
All right. I'd love to. It's a pleasure being on. Appreciate you having me, and certainly psyched for the partnership, and love what you guys are doing. So keep at it.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll wrap things there. And again, if you are an unstoppable domains holder, you can already mint right now at coinage.media to co-own the community-owned show answering crypto's biggest questions. Charlie Brooks, nice enough to take the time with us. Everybody, coinage.media, public drop coming next week, February 9th. Stay tuned. Thanks again for chatting.